The elevator doors slid open and I ran. Not walked. Not hurried. I ran barefoot, breath tearing out of my chest, phone buzzing in my hand like it wanted to explode. My heel caught the carpet and I almost fell, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, the lights blurring, my pulse pounding so loudly it drowned out my thoughts. I didn't look at the numbers on the doors. I just knocked. Hard. Desperate. 3 sharp knocks that came from somewhere deeper than my hands, like if I didn't knock, I might collapse right there and disappear. If you believe one moment can change everything, stay with me. And if stories like this pull something out of you, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. The door opened almost immediately. I looked up and my stomach dropped. This was not Daniel's door. This was not the cheap hallway, the familiar smell of cologne and takeout, the place I had stormed out of 15 minutes ago with my heart in pieces. This door belonged to someone else entirely. The man standing there was tall, still as stone, dressed in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled just enough to show control, not comfort. Dark eyes. Sharp jaw. A face that didn't look surprised, just alert. Like nothing caught him off guard, but everything was calculated. For half a second, neither of us spoke. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, the words tripping over each other. "Wrong door." I turned to leave, humiliation crashing over me in a hot wave. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists. "Wait." His voice stopped me. Not loud. Not commanding. Just steady. Grounded. I turned back despite myself. He looked at me more closely now. My soaked hair clinging to my face. My mascara streaked without permission. My chest rising too fast, like my body hadn't gotten the memo that I was safe, if this even counted as safe. "Are you hurt?" he asked. That question did something to me. I laughed, a broken sound that surprised us both. "No. I mean yes. I don't know. Not like that." Silence stretched between us. I noticed details I didn't want to notice. The soft light behind him, the quiet that hummed instead of echoed, the way his hand rested on the doorframe like he was bracing himself for something unpredictable. "I shouldn't be here," I said. "I'm leaving." I stepped away again. "You ran," he said. "People who are fine don't run down hallways like they're being chased." I swallowed. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look at it. "I just needed a minute," I whispered. He hesitated. I could see it. A flicker of internal debate crossed his face, like he was deciding whether opening that door had been a mistake. Then he stepped aside. "5 minutes," he said. "You can sit. Catch your breath. Then you go." I should have said no. I should have thanked him and walked away and let this be another strange story I told my friends later with nervous laughter. Instead, I crossed the threshold. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt louder than thunder. The apartment was nothing like Daniel's place. No clutter. No half-finished conversations hanging in the air. Everything had a purpose, even the silence. The windows stretched across the city like it was something owned, not admired. I stood there awkwardly, suddenly aware of how small I felt. "I'm Victoria," I said, because the quiet demanded something. "Santiago," he replied. "Santiago Perez." The name landed heavier than it should have, though I didn't know why yet. He gestured toward the couch, keeping his distance. "Sit." I did, perching on the edge like I might be asked to leave any second. My knee bounced uncontrollably. My throat burned. He handed me a glass of water without a word. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely holding together. He didn't sit. He leaned against the counter instead, arms crossed, not defensive, just contained. "What happened?" he asked. I shook my head immediately. You don't have to tell me everything," he said. "But something happened. The dam cracked." "I walked in on my fiancé," I said, staring at the water so I wouldn't have to see his reaction. "With another woman. In the apartment we were supposed to move into next month." I waited for sympathy. For shock. For something obvious. Instead, Santiago's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He didn't even deny it, I continued, the words spilling faster now. He just looked annoyed, like I was interrupting something. And when I started crying, he asked me why I was being dramatic. My chest hitched. I hated that it still hurt this much saying it out loud. So I left, I said. I didn't know where else to go. I pressed the wrong floor in the elevator. And then I knocked on your door like an idiot. You're not an idiot, Santiago said quietly. That made my eyes sting worse. I laughed again, wiping at my face angrily. I don't even know you. No, he agreed. But I know what it looks like when someone's world cracks open. That was when I finally looked at him. Really looked. There was something in his eyes that didn't belong to tonight. Something older. He wasn't curious about my pain. He recognized it. I should leave, I said again, but weaker this time. You can, he said. I'm not keeping you here. But neither of us moved. The city lights flickered behind him like a distant pulse, and for the first time since everything fell apart, my chest loosened just a fraction. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 into silence that didn't feel awkward anymore. I didn't know it yet, but that knock. That stupid, panicked, mistaken knock had already changed something. And this night was only beginning. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding myself together until my shoulders finally dropped. Santiago noticed. He didn't comment on it. He just pushed a folded blanket toward me across the couch, like it was the most natural thing in the world to offer warmth to a stranger who had broken into his night by accident. For the shock, he said. Not the cold. I took it anyway. My fingers brushed the fabric and then stilled, like I was afraid accepting comfort would make everything real. 5 minutes, I reminded him softly, trying to sound like I still had control. Of course, he said. But he didn't glance at the time. I sipped the water. My hands were still trembling, but slower now. The silence stretched again, but this one didn't choke me. It felt held. Like the air itself was waiting with me. Does it get easier? I asked suddenly. He didn't answer right away. I looked up and found him watching the city through the glass, not really seeing it. No, he said finally. You just learn how to carry it without bleeding everywhere. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That's comforting. In a terrifying way. A corner of his mouth lifted. Not a smile. Something quieter. You asked, he said. I studied him, curiosity creeping in despite myself. What about you? You don't seem like someone who has people knocking on his door in the middle of the night. Usually, he said, they don't knock. That earned a small laugh from me before I could stop it. It startled us both. There it is, he said, almost to himself. What? Your laugh, he replied. It sounded like it was buried under a lot of apologies. I frowned. You psychoanalyze strangers often? Only the ones who break down in my hallway. I shook my head, smiling despite the ache still lodged in my chest. You're strange. So I've been told. The clock on the wall ticked softly. I noticed it then. Not loud. Not demanding. Just present. Like time had decided to slow down for us, if only for tonight. I should text someone, I said, more to convince myself than him. Let them know I'm okay. Do you have someone? He asked. The question landed harder than I expected. I unlocked my phone. Scrolled. Names blurred together, friends who were asleep, coworkers who didn't need my mess, family who would panic and ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I locked the screen again. No, I said. Not right now. Santiago nodded once, like that answer confirmed something he already knew. You can stay a little longer, he said. I'll take the couch if it makes you uncomfortable. It doesn't, I said quickly, then paused. I mean, thank you. For not making this weird. He met my gaze. Victoria, this was already weird. I'm just choosing not to make it cruel. That word. Cruel. Daniel's voice echoed in my head. Why are you acting like this? You're embarrassing yourself. I pressed my lips together. Can I ask you something? I said. You already are. Why did you open the door? That finally made him look away from me. I don't usually, he said. I almost didn't tonight. But you did. Yes. Why? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer at all. Because, he said carefully, I know what it's like to stand on the other side of a door hoping someone will see you before you fall apart. My throat tightened. I shifted on the couch, pulling the blanket closer. Who were you hoping would open? He exhaled slowly. Someone who didn't. We sat with that. The city lights outside blurred as my eyes stung again, But this time I didn't rush to wipe them away. I loved him, I said softly. Daniel. I built my future around him. And now it feels like I don't know who I am without that plan. Santiago turned fully toward me then. You're not lost, he said. You're just early in the part where you stop lying to yourself. That's a terrible way to phrase it. It's an honest one. I laughed weakly. You're really not comforting. And yet, he said, you're still here. I hated how right he was. Minutes blurred. We talked, not about Daniel, not about the betrayal, but about small things. Music. Travel. The strange pressure of being expected to become someone before you feel ready. At some point, I noticed how easily he listened. Not waiting for his turn to speak. Not fixing. Just present. You don't interrupt, I said. I don't like wasting words, he replied. What about feelings? His jaw tightened again. Those are harder to manage. Something about that honesty made my chest ache. The space between us shrank without either of us moving. Not physically, emotionally. Like walls lowering brick by brick. Then it happened. The moment. I stood to stretch, my legs stiff from sitting too long. He stepped closer instinctively, maybe to steady me. We froze inches apart. His breath was warm. Steady. My heart slammed into my ribs. This was dangerous territory. I knew it. Vulnerability mixed with proximity. Pain mixed with relief. I looked up at him. He didn't move. Didn't touch me. Didn't lean in. Instead, he stepped back. You should rest, he said quietly. You've had enough for one night. Something in his voice told me this wasn't about sleep. I nodded, suddenly unsure of everything again. He gestured toward the bedroom down the hall. You can take the bed. I'll be fine out here. I hesitated. Santiago. Victoria, he interrupted gently. Nothing good happens when two wounded people confuse comfort for promises. That stopped me cold. I swallowed. Good night. Good night, he replied. As I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, one thought echoed louder than the rest. This wasn't supposed to matter. But somehow, it already did. I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to the quiet hum of a life that wasn't mine, the distant city noise muffled by glass thick enough to keep the world out, the faint clink of ice somewhere in the kitchen, Santiago moving softly like he was careful not to disturb ghosts. At some point, I rolled onto my side and stared at the dark. My chest felt tight again, but not the panicked kind. This was heavier, thoughtful, dangerous. Because I felt safe. That realization scared me more than the night I'd just escaped. When morning finally bled into the room, it did so gently. No alarm. No rush. Just light creeping in like it didn't want to startle me. I sat up slowly, my head pounding as reality returned piece by piece. Daniel. The hallway. The knock. Santiago. Oh God. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood, suddenly very aware of how strange this all was. I straightened my clothes, smoothed my hair with my fingers like that would somehow restore dignity, then stepped out into the living room. Santiago was already awake. He stood by the window, sleeves rolled up again, coffee in hand. The city stretched endlessly behind him, like he belonged to it in a way I never could. Morning, he said without turning around. Morning, I replied, my voice rough. There was a pause, then he turned, studying my face like he was checking for cracks. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. I mean, as okay as someone can be after accidentally trauma dumping on a stranger. His mouth twitched. You didn't dump. You survived. He handed me a mug without asking. Black coffee. No sugar. I took a sip and grimaced. You don't believe in joy, do you? I believe in clarity. That explains a lot. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Too normal. Like we were playing house in a life that wasn't real. Then my eyes drifted to the massive television mounted on the wall. The news was on. And there he was. Santiago Perez. The same sharp jaw. The same controlled expression. Only now, his name scrolled across the bottom of the screen in bold letters, followed by words that made my stomach drop. Tech mogul. Billionaire. Industry disruptor. I froze. The mug slipped slightly in my hand, hot coffee sloshing dangerously close to my fingers. You didn't tell me, I said slowly. Santiago followed my gaze. His shoulders tensed, not surprised, just resigned. I didn't think it mattered. I turned fully toward him. You're kidding. I'm not. I laughed, sharp and incredulous. You're Santiago Perez. That's Santiago Perez. Yes. And you just forgot to mention that? I didn't forget, he said evenly. I chose not to. The warmth from earlier evaporated, replaced by something brittle and exposed. Why? I asked. So I wouldn't treat you differently? So you wouldn't feel smaller, he replied. That did it. Too late, I snapped. Because now I do. Silence crashed between us. I opened up to you, I said, my voice shaking. I cried on your couch. I slept in your bed. And you just let me do all of that without telling me who you really are. I told you exactly who I am, he said, his tone tightening. I just didn't list my net worth. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? He shot back. The moment people know, everything changes. Conversations shift. Motives blur. I didn't want that. You didn't give me a choice, I said. You let me think we were equals. His eyes darkened. We are. No, I whispered. We're not. You live up here. I don't even know where I'm sleeping tonight. That doesn't make you less than me. It makes me vulnerable, I said. And you knew that. His jaw clenched. I knew you were hurting. That's all. I shook my head, stepping back like proximity itself had become dangerous. I don't know what last night was anymore. It was two people talking, he said. Nothing more. That hurt worse than I expected. Right, I said quietly. Of course. I set the mug down carefully, like if I moved too fast I'd shatter completely. I should go, I said. Victoria. I shouldn't have stayed, I interrupted. This was a mistake. The knock. The night. All of it. That's not true, he said firmly. Isn't it? I asked. Because now I feel like a charity case. Like something you did to feel human for a night. His eyes flashed. That's unfair. So was not telling me the truth. The words hung heavy between us. He took a step toward me, then stopped himself. If you walk out now, he said quietly, I won't stop you. Something in his voice, resigned, almost, made my chest ache. I grabbed my phone, my bag. Everything felt heavier than it had minutes ago. At the door, my hand hovered over the handle. I didn't knock on your door because you're rich, I said without turning around. I knocked because I was breaking. I know, he replied. And I don't regret that part, I continued. But I can't pretend this doesn't change things. I wouldn't ask you to. I opened the door. Goodbye, Santiago. He didn't answer. The door closed behind me with the same soft click as before, but this time, it sounded final. The hallway felt colder than I remembered. Longer. Emptier. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed again. Daniel. I didn't answer. I leaned my head back against the mirrored wall and closed my eyes, fighting tears. I had escaped one betrayal only to stumble into something far more confusing. And the worst part? A piece of me already missed him. I thought leaving would make things clearer. It didn't. The city swallowed me whole the moment I stepped outside the building. Cars rushed past, people brushed my shoulder without seeing me, life moving on like nothing monumental had just cracked open inside my chest. I spent the next 2 days in survival mode. I stayed with a friend who asked too many gentle questions I didn't answer. I ignored Daniel's calls until they stopped. I went to work on autopilot, smiling at customers, nodding at conversations, pretending I wasn't replaying every second of that night on a loop. The knock. The door. Santiago's eyes when he listened like my pain mattered. I hated myself for missing him. Because missing him meant admitting it wasn't just shock or exhaustion or vulnerability. It meant that something real had happened in the space of a single night, and I'd walked away from it because I was afraid of how small I felt standing next to him. On the third night, I finally broke. I sat alone on my friend's couch, phone in my hand, staring at a text I'd typed and erased at least 20 times. I don't belong in your world. You should have told me the truth. I miss you. None of them felt right. What scared me most wasn't Santiago's money or his power. It was the way he'd seen me at my worst and still looked at me like I was enough. That kind of connection doesn't come from comfort. It comes from courage. And I realized something then, quietly, painfully. I had accused him of hiding behind who he was. But I had been hiding too. Hiding behind fear. Behind pride. Behind the excuse that walking away was easier than risking rejection. I stood up so fast the room spun. I have to go, I muttered to no one. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, my courage, whatever scraps of it I could find, and left before I could change my mind. The elevator ride up felt longer than the first time. My heart pounded harder with every passing floor, not because I was running from something now, but because I was running toward it. When I reached his floor, my legs almost gave out. The hallway looked exactly the same. Quiet. Still. Unforgiving. I stopped in front of his door. And hesitated. What if he didn't open it? What if he did, and didn't want me there anymore? I lifted my hand anyway. And knocked. This time slowly. Intentionally. Once. The door opened. Santiago stood there, eyes widening just enough to betray him. For a second, neither of us spoke again, just like the first night. But this silence felt different. Charged. Alive. I didn't knock by mistake this time, I said, my voice shaking but steady enough to carry truth. And I won't pretend I'm not scared. But I'd rather be scared than walk away wondering what would have happened if I stayed. He stared at me like he was afraid I might disappear if he blinked. You left, he said quietly. I know, I replied. And I'm sorry. I let my insecurities speak louder than my honesty. His jaw tightened. You had every right to be angry. I did, I agreed. But I was wrong about one thing. What? I thought you didn't tell me who you were because you wanted control, I said. But you didn't. You wanted connection. And I punished you for that. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but something far more dangerous. Hope. I don't want to be a chapter in your life, I continued. Or a night you remember when things get quiet. I don't need your world. I just need the truth. All of it. He stepped aside without a word. An invitation. I crossed the threshold again. The door closed behind me. This time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. I don't know how to do this halfway, Santiago said, finally breaking the silence. If you stay, it won't be casual. It won't be easy. I don't want easy, I said. I want real. He searched my face, like he was looking for an exit he didn't want to take. Then he nodded. So do I. He reached for my hand, not rushing, not claiming, just asking. I laced my fingers through his. The city still glowed outside the windows. The world was still complicated. My life wasn't magically fixed. But for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like I wasn't walking alone anymore. And it all started with one mistaken knock. That turned out to be exactly where I was meant to be. If this story moved you, if you believe one moment, one choice, one knock can change everything, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories like this, and tell me in the comments, would you have walked away or knocked again? Because sometimes, the wrong door is the right beginning. Until next time, this is Soul Storyverse TV.